They have football in their hands. There are 13 teams spread across 13 countries, and more than 500 players under the command of this group. There are millions and millions involved in this football empire. Imagine your favorite club having the same owner as the opponent in the fight for the continental title. Well, that's what's happening with the group that owns Manchester City. Manchester City is much more than just a football team, and that's exactly how they literally took control of world football. The City Football Group, owned by the sheikhs of the United Arab Emirates, is valued at more than 25 billion riyals. In 2008, he began his journey in the world of football by acquiring Manchester City with the main objective of dominating European football. With more than 1 billion euros invested in transfers and hiring the best players and coaches, it brought City an impressive 19 trophies. They invested so much in Manchester City to the point that financial fair play, the regulation that controls football spending, was unable to control the English club's great purchasing power. Consequently, the club was accused of more than 100 rule violations, facing the real threat of exclusion from European competition for 2 years. The club, however, appealed the punishment. The group is also criticized for suspicions of sports washing. In other words, it is the use of sport as a way to erase, hide, or divert attention from the actions that the UAE governments, that is, the group's investors, wish to hide from the rest of the world. But that didn't stop them from dominating world football, the domain. Following the notable success in the acquisition of Manchester City, the group announced Ferran Soriano, former vice president of Barcelona, as the club's CEO. What was initially a plan to dominate Europe turned into an ambition to dominate world football. The sheikhs were delighted with Soriano's idea of transforming Manchester City into a global brand. The project involved the acquisition of several clubs around the world, identifying the best young talents, developing them, and, subsequently, promoting them to the biggest clubs in the group, such as City itself. The smaller clubs within the conglomerate literally act as stepping stones for players. Soriano took over Manchester City on September 1, 2012. 2 days later, he arrived in New York to create a new football club. That meant paying $100 million for a place in MLS. They were just starting out. 10 years after the creation of New York City, the group was already consolidating its dominance in global football. With control over 5 continents and managing more than 500 professional players in different parts of the world. Currently, the City Group controls 13 football teams, spread across 13 countries. The group's strategic interest is always in clubs considered small and cheap, preferably in markets where it is possible to win back fans who have lost interest in their favorite team. With the exception of Bahia, 2-time Brazilian champion, and Bolivar, holder of 29 titles and Bolivia's greatest champion, the other clubs did not have an extensive history of achievements before being incorporated into the project. From the moment the group acquires a team, the league quickly becomes too small for the team under its control, thanks to its enormous purchasing power. This gives the group a certain control over football in the country. There are no expensive players, coaches for them, which explains the immediate results achieved. For example, Melbourne has won the Australian Championship once and the Australian Premiership 3 times in the last 3 years after joining the City Group. Yokohama ended a 15-year drought by winning the Japanese Championship in 2019 and has repeated the feat since then. New York City won the MLS. Mumbai achieved the Indian Premier League double in its first year under group control, culminating in the league title last season with one of the most dominant displays in Indian League history. And finally, 15 years after acquiring the group, Manchester City won the Champions League. It is impressive to note that 8 of the 13 current teams in the group won at least one major title last season. Some clubs in the group adopt the City brand after their first name, in addition to emblems and uniforms similar to Manchester City. Others, with consolidated histories, maintain their traditional brands. The group's aim is to mirror Manchester City's success and Guardiola's attacking style of play across all of the group's teams around the world, and thus create a unique brand identity for City. Delivering an attacking style of play, which is a pleasure to watch, is an identity we adopt at all of our clubs. The objective is to play in Manchester City's attacking style, said a group director. Recently, the group acquired 80% of the capital of the Italian team Palermo, known for revealing stars such as Edson Cavani, Javier Pastore, Paulo Dybala, among others. Furthermore, in 2021, the group expanded its presence to the South American market, acquiring Bolívar. A year later, he consolidated himself even further by acquiring Bahia. This strategy demonstrates an ingenious approach, providing the group with a direct link to one of football's most promising markets. With so many clubs under the same ownership, the question arises: if teams belonging to the same owner face each other in a competition, what are the possible consequences? Rumors recently emerged that Manchester City and Girona were at risk of missing out on the upcoming Champions League due to both clubs being owned by the same owner. However, in practice, this possibility does not exist, as UEFA allows clubs with the same owner to be in the Champions League. But it does not allow these teams to trade players with each other. The penalties, it seems, only apply to players loaned between clubs within the same conglomerate. A concrete example of this scenario is the player Yan Couto, highlight of the season in La Liga, who, as he is on loan from Manchester City, will not be able to compete in the Champions League for Girona, a club also belonging to the group. The strategy of developing young talents in smaller clubs and later promoting them to bigger clubs in the same group is already in practice. This became evident recently with the case of the player Savinho. He was signed by Troyes, also belonging to the City group. He was later loaned to Girona, and Manchester City recently signed him for next season. Thus, he played for two smaller clubs in the same group before arriving at the conglomerate's main club, Manchester City. Since 2013, Manchester City have transferred 19 players to Melbourne, 16 to Girona, and 4 to New York. This is the group's idea: to strengthen their respective teams with their own players. The professional responsible for this project was initially called crazy when he presented it to other clubs. However, today, he is the mind behind the success of the group and Manchester City, and none of this would be possible without him. Genius of the city. Soriano was one of the professionals who orchestrated this entire project. He even presented the idea to Barcelona's directors, but they considered it a crazy proposal and rejected it. If I had presented this idea to Real Madrid, the response would have been, "You're crazy." And that's what actually happened in Barcelona, revealed Ferran Soriano. This was an idea he had more than 12 years ago, when he was still vice president of Barcelona. Everything is very well planned, and it is no coincidence that they have consolidated the objective of having clubs in the three most populous countries in the world: China, India, and the United States. These markets not only have strong economies, but they also have the most advanced technologies in the world. The strategy is to make the most of the cutting-edge technologies unique to these countries, thus ensuring the sharing of training content, game performance data, and injury recovery methods, and thus passing on these technologies to all teams in the group. With teams present in these countries, access to these technologies will be facilitated. A football franchise that operates in a similar way to the City Group is the Red Bull Group, which currently also owns several clubs around the world. Now, I would like to know your opinion. Do you agree with this business model in football? Write here in the comments, and I want to know. Also, take the opportunity to leave your like, which helps us continue to bring new content like this. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss new videos. A big hug, and until next time.